from our possessions to life itself, we know all too well that God has given us everything. And God also gives us Jesus Christ and salvation. And these are all things without price, right? But our lives betray what really holds value for us, what's most important to us. Because we reach out to hold on to God, but really find ourselves reaching for so many other things instead. And so is it really possible for God to forgive us for not valuing our faith as much as God seems to value us? Well, the mercies of God make this more than possible. In fact, Jesus thought we were worth dying for. And so because of this, Jesus thinks it is worth being with us right here, right now, to help us. And so, thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
So what's it worth to you? What would you list as the assets of our church? People? Sure. Property? Sure. Our history? Sure. Our bank accounts? Would that be okay? What else? What else are our assets? How about our location? Isn't that an asset? And we mentioned people, right? We should. And not just the staff. And we measure how we appreciate people or how we value people really by how we compensate them, right? Whether it's money or whether it's heartfelt acts of gratitude or appreciation. Whatever we do, we measure how we value people by what we do. But here's a question for you. Is our church worth investing? Is our church worth investing? I mean, is it a sure bet? Is it a guaranteed win? And however we define it, is it a good investment? Is it a good return on what we put into it? You hear a lot of enthusiasm. And here's the thing. When we're thinking about this, we should consider that our forebears certainly thought so, didn't they? Because they didn't just want us to be in a building. They wanted this building to be here so that we could be here. They went beyond just making sure that we're on a historical register. They wanted to make sure that we always remember our common heritage as members of this church, as members of this community. So here's the real question. Are we worth investing in? Yeah, I think we are. When we think about our value, when we think about worth, sometimes it's easy to think about, for example, our money, our possessions. How many of you have a will? Okay, that's good. Those of you who don't have one, get one, like in the next month. Really, next week. Nobody knows. No one knows when their end will come. Please, by all means, make it easy for your family and have a will. Now, I will say, sometimes that doesn't always matter. When I was working, the church I was working with in Florida, the first church I worked with when I left seminary, the head of staff was approached by this family to become the healthcare surrogate for a woman who was just in decline. And they all lived way, way out of state, and so they couldn't care and tend to her, day-to-day needs and decisions. And so they really wanted him to do this. He was very hesitant. But then he decided, okay, I'll take it on. So he did. And rather than decline further, she actually improved and was having the prospect of actually leaving the care facility that she was in because his management of her care was so good. So the family fired him. They fired her, and 2 weeks later she died. We came to find out later she was worth, in their minds, $3.4 million. But I'm guessing that wasn't the legacy she wanted to leave with her family. I mean, as a matriarch, I think she would hope that she was more than just the money to them. And they made no bones about telling us so. How many fights have ensued over what people think they are due or owed or whatever is left? This cannot possibly be what God wants us to be concerned about. But, look, there's a lot of ways, right, for us to inherit things. Not just through wills, not just money. Sometimes it's genetics, right? How many of you spent time thinking about what you inherited from your parents? Because if you looked at my siblings and I, there would be no question in your mind that we all came from Linda Ely. I mean, we all look like her. My girls look like her. I mean, I don't know what's going on in her family, but the gene pool is strong. But I mean, have you really thought about what it is that you gained from those who came before you? Have you thought about it at all? What did you inherit? And you can inherit more than just stuff, more than just physical traits, right? You can also inherit ideas. I mean, how often is it that we have adopted the values and the ideas, the wisdom, and even sometimes the frailty of those who came before us, those who are around us, those who raised us? We can pass on ideas too. We are worried a lot about what we actually possess. But do we really think much about what it is that we're going to be passing on? Do we pay attention to what it is that we are bequeathing to those who will come after us? And not just in our house, but in this house, in our community. Are we concerned about what we're passing on to the world with what we are doing, with what God has given us? This is what makes so interesting for me, this story that comes out of Genesis chapter 25. How many of you are familiar with Jacob and Esau? Okay, good. Pay attention to this. So, these are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham became the father of Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean, and the sister of Laban, the Aramean, from Padan Aram. So Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife, since she was unable to have children, and the Lord was moved by his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. But the boys pushed against each other inside of her, and she said, "If this is what it's like, why did it happen to me?" So she asked the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two different peoples will emerge from your body. One people will be stronger than the other. The older will serve the younger." When she reached the end of her pregnancy, she discovered that she had twins. The first came out red all over, clothed with hair, and she named him Esau. Immediately afterward, his brother came out, gripping Esau's heel, and she named him Jacob. Now, I gotta tell you, Jacob, right, means trickster. I just want you to keep that in mind, okay, for what you hear later. And by the way, Jacob, when it's anglicized, becomes James. So anybody you know whose name is James, you need to be watching it. And my first name is James. All right. So Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. And when the young men grew up, Esau became an outdoorsman who knew how to hunt, and Jacob became a quiet man who stayed at home. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once, when Jacob was boiling stew, Esau came in from the field hungry and said to Jacob, "I'm starving. Let me devour some of this red stuff." That's why his name is Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright today." Esau said, "Since I'm going to die anyway, what good is my birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Give me your word today." And he did. He sold his birthright to Jacob. So Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew. He ate, drank, got up, and left, showing just how little he thought of his birthright. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, I mean, it may not seem like much, but the right of the firstborn was supremely important in this culture. I mean, they were going to be in charge of the family estate. They were given the reins, literally the keys to the kingdom, whenever the patriarch would die. They were in charge. They had everything. They could decide who got what, all kinds of things. It was a real privilege, a real responsibility. And this was a gift because, Esau didn't have any control over the fact that he came out first. And believe me, Jacob tried. Remember, he was holding on to his heel when he came out. But even with all of Jacob's tricks, and believe me, I think he knew that he could trick his brother into doing this. Esau allowed it to happen. He chose to disregard what he had been given and to treat it like garbage. And it kind of makes me wonder about the way we treat the things that we've been given. The things that we know that we didn't get on our own. Those things that we know that God provided for us and made in us. Do we fight over them? Do we share them? Do we thank God for them? Or do we think that it's really just something that we came in with on our own? How much of what we have really is inherited from God? And when we think about what's been given and what we give to others, do we think about how responsible we are with those gifts? How many of you would ever do this with a child that young? Anybody? And yet when I think about God giving us the Holy Spirit, I can't help but think that we are the child on the pile. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And yet I'm a part of this kingdom that God's trying to build. How does that work? How many of you know the story in Daniel 5 with the writing on the wall? Maybe y'all know that? Okay, great, because you're going to love this. So Belteshazzar is the last king of Babylon, okay? And he is so enamored with the strength of the walls of the city that he just thinks they're impenetrable. And they have stood for many, many years. I mean, for decades upon decades. And so he's in there and he is partying hard with all of his court. And they even took some of the items away from the Jewish exiles who were among them to use as wine goblets and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was just sacrilege. And they were going to town, having a good time, and suddenly a hand appears and begins to write on the wall. And what it writes is, Mene, Tekel, Ufasim. You have been measured, you have been found wanting, the Persians are at your door, you are going down. Is basically what it meant. And as he was getting this message, it occurred to me, reading this story, that I think we do this too. We have this tendency to miss what we've been giving, what it's really for. We forget that everything is fleeting. We forget that things can change at a moment's notice. For those of you who mess around at all with the stock market, is this a sure thing? Why not? Well, okay, to be sure, it stays the same, say, for a week at least, right? Well, okay, so it stays the same during the course of the day, right? What? Well, okay, at least an hour, right?
It's minute by minute.
Actually, it's millisecond by millisecond, isn't it? I mean, the stock market tickers, they're constantly changing. Constantly. There goes your wealth, fleeting. One moment you are up, the next moment you are destitute. Right? And while that's maybe an extreme example, the truth is that's true of everything about our lives. From one minute to the next, our life might be one way, and then it might be another. A friend of ours named Shasta, she's on the prayer list. One minute she thought she was free and clear because when they did the operation to remove her uterus, they found that they thought that the tumor was benign. Then upon testing it, the next minute she discovers that she did in fact have cancer. And now she's got the prospect of having to wait for chemotherapy after she recovers from the surgery that she initially thought was successful. How many times in our lives have we thought our lives were going one way and then they ended up going another? How many times have we made plans only to find that, well, so much for that? How many times have we run into things and discovered that it wasn't what we thought? How many times have we looked at ourselves and we've missed the boat on how God values us? In the letter to the Philippian church, Paul tries to help us and give us some language to help us change our perspective and to change how we look at what has value, how to prioritize what's important. And he says, though I have good reason to have confidence, if anyone else has reason to put their confidence in physical advantages, I have even more. I was circumcised on the 8th day. I'm from the people of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin. I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews. With respect to observing the law, I'm a Pharisee. With respect to devotion to the faith, I harass the church. And with respect to righteousness under the law, I'm blameless. Now, these things might not seem like much to us, but each of these things that Paul was ticking off were all pointing to how he is a Jew of Jews. And if anybody was centered in the promises of God, it was him. But he says, these things were my assets, but I wrote them off as a loss for the sake of Christ. But even beyond that, I consider everything a loss in comparison with the superior value of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. I have lost everything for him, but what I lost I think of as sewer trash, so that I might gain Christ and be found in him. In Christ I have a righteousness that is not my own and that does not come from the law, but rather from the faithfulness of Christ. It is the righteousness of God that is based on faith. How much do you value your faith? How much do you value the Christ that seeks to be a part of your life, that seeks to be all of your life? How much do you value not just what God did for us way back in the day, but how much do you value what God's trying to do with you now? And not just for the moment, and not just for here, but for our community, for our state, for our country. Even for the world. At some point, we have to get to the point where we stop thinking of our possessions or our things as things only for us, but rather as blessings that God has granted us in order that we might become a better humanity. And God's trying to make us a part of that. So what are you going to do with your inheritance? What's it worth to you? Ask every day, what's salvation worth to me today? And then live accordingly. Live as though your life has been bought at the highest price possible, the life of Christ. And be careful. Don't be careless. Rest in your riches and give all of it away. In time, in talent, in treasures, and temerity. And as we do so, the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, will guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. With incomparable riches. In the name of the one who gives us all things. Amen. So, you need to watch your God stock. I mean, the one thing the stock market teaches us, right? Well, apart from the fact that it's organized gambling, is that we need to do more than just watch, right? We have to act one way or another. And this is true of our faith and membership in the church as well. We've got to do more than just watch. We have to act. And so how do we live like God is the most valuable stock that we have? How do we get there? Consider the following this week. First, what would you list as your assets? What would you list as your assets? And then, what value do you think God places on the items in your list? Second, if life were a movie, what would people learn about God's worth watching you? What would people learn about God's worth by watching you? Third, what would God write on your wall when measuring you? When I got to thinking about that hand writing on the wall and telling him, you've been measured, you've been found wanting, the Persians are at your gates, you are going down. And I think about the things that I have done in my life, the things I've even thought about, and I can't imagine what God might put on my wall. There's a part of me that doesn't want to know. And then I remember, God's already written on our walls, y'all. God's made a choice and invites us to do the same. The last thing that I would encourage you is, how are you going to celebrate the value that God places on your life this week? How are you going to celebrate the value that God places on your life this week? When you find yourself in that situation where you don't feel like you're strong enough, or you don't feel like you're worth anything, where you think that it's impossible, how will you stop and consider and take in the fact that God thinks you're of such value that you are worth dying for? And then what will you do differently?